As an artist, your career will last your lifetime, or at least that should be the plan anyway. And what you study in school may not always be what you do for the rest of your life. New opportunities come up, say, getting a job teaching for a while. New technologies get developed where they need someone who can learn software quickly and then create with it even faster. Sometimes you find out you're really good at something you never even thought of, like identifying and collaborating with other artists that are on the rise. So over the next few weeks, as we head into the end of the year and start thinking about plans for the next year and what we're going to do and where we're going to go and how we're going to make a living, I'm going to talk with some artists whose careers have pivoted several times in their career. And I want to stress that their careers are not over, because one thing to understand as an artist is that you can do anything you want, and that is what makes a lifetime in the arts so rewarding. On this episode of Creative Mind, I talk with Aaron Guadamuz. He's a musician, a stop-motion artist, an animator, a curator, and even, you could say, a technologist. In short, Aaron is a working artist, and an artist working in the contemporary art scene as well. That hard-to-understand, frustrating world of art that few people like, and even fewer people get right now. Here's Aaron Guadamuz.
Downtown Redwood City, there was a place called Pony Express, and that's where all the bands played. You know, when I first heard about it, it was kind of on the glam scene, but by the time I was in high school, pretty much the metal punk scene had taken it over. You know, the first time I actually heard of Green Day was because my buddy had that written on the grip tape of his skateboard. He had Green Day, and his little punk band, he had a punk band called Think, which I still think is an awesome name. But they opened for Green Day at the Pony Express, which fits like 30 people. That was the first time I heard of them, because that was one of the spots on the West Bay that you could play, and it was like,
really?
you know, $3 to $5.
Back in the day when you could actually go see a band for $5.
Yeah, and there'd be mosh pits like were basically that intruded on the band. You know, you got like 6 feet. You know, like
those coffee shops where the riser's a foot. Maybe,
oh, right.
maybe a foot and a half.
Yeah, right.
And it took longer for the drummer to set up than the entire band.
Oh, totally. Well, you know what's funny is a lot of those older dudes too that were they were like ahead of us, and they came from like the shredder generation. I'd see people bringing these like kits that belong on like stages at like the Oakland Coliseum into this.
Yeah, like they would be built in frames, and it'd be like they'd have it in the back of a pickup truck. And you're
cages,
like, what are you doing?
Like both guitar players would have like 2 huge stacks of amps, and it's like, dude, yeah, I remember I was always trying to keep up with the sound, you know.
So this is going to be fun because we're going to jump in and we're going to get a little nostalgic, but I'm really excited to talk to you because, you know, when we talked before about doing this and, you know, going through what you do, you know, and what you do at the Academy, and just, you know, the art that you create is, you know, video art, you know, the whole thing of contemporary art, interpretive art is such a weird thing for people to understand. And I mean, even myself, who's been involved in it a little bit, these are concepts of art that are so new and so different than what somebody goes to art school and makes, you know, art school looking things does. And
right.
I mean, like how do you explain to somebody video art?
Okay, so just to jump on that a little bit, I almost think that the people that like are in the business of like contemporary art, they don't know what it is. Almost. You know, no, it's this very like nebulous thing. So like contemporary art, I guess, you know, even like it just means art that's happening now in the second half of this century, whatever. And it's forever changing. So when you get into video art, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I feel like it almost has its roots like way back when. It almost has its roots with people who did like weird art films. Yeah, almost like, you know, the stuff that like, you know, Buñuel and Dali did. You know, I'm sure we'll talk about Kenneth Anger a little bit, but then, you know, that stuff like kind of, you know, that really
filming performance art.
Yeah,
it's not, but it's not a documentary, but it's
right.
What the fuck is it?
And some of it's totally interpretive. Some of it's like borderline unwatchable. I mean, like, you know, and some of it I think might be aimed to torture you a little bit, like like
Right.
Warhol making a 24-hour movie,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's like, that to me, it's where you're taking a medium and you're mixing it with like, something that's, more of a, accepted or regular kind of art form, like painting, almost like, like a Basquiat painting. What would that look like as a film? And it would be something that's just purely interpretive, So when it comes to the newer generation of video art, this has become a thing in contemporary art, and there's a lot of artists out there that make art that is purely video, and they'll make an edition of it just like it's a print or something, and they'll sell it, and it's big money stuff. They'll make like an edition of it. They'll make like 10 of them, and they'll sell for this crazy amount of money. One of the main artists who kind of started this, or one of the big guys in this, was Matthew Barney. There are these things that could be shown in museums but couldn't be owned, but people have found ways to like, bootleg them or whatever.
Right. That's one of the things that seems popular with a lot of contemporary art that we're gonna, just kind of brush over, and like the punk
Right.
rock scene and skate art. It's like, how do you own something that is not really tangible?
Well, that's true. I mean, it's rather, you mean like as far as video would go, or just art in
Yeah,
general?
it's just art. Well, art in general for sure, but video art and a lot of this contemporary art does have this kind of idea of it. It's your, if you weren't there, how can you say you saw it?
Yeah, okay, yeah. You're getting like into the real deep stuff.
Yeah, well,
Like,
because we don't get to talk to people about this kind of stuff that often.
So to take it back with my experience with it, I worked for just a hot minute in New York for a guy named Lance Kins, who he passed away a couple years ago, but he was kind of one of the guys who pioneered the video art thing. He had an artist named Jeremy Blake, who people might know him from, or if I said they might identify as, he did all the weird transitions in the movie Punch Drunk Love, the Adam Sandler, Paul Thomas Anderson movie. All the like artwork in that is all him, and that's because Paul Thomas Anderson saw his stuff in one of the big museums somewhere in some city and really loved it and thought, oh, that will work for my movie. But so he would do an edition of his newest thing, but it would show like at MoMA, or for like a certain amount of time. And, each one of these things might cost 20, 30 grand to own the actual the video, but there's like 10 of them. And then they would make these huge prints of the of some scenes in it. And it was all this bright colored stuff. And, right when I was working for them, it seemed like right when this stuff was kind of like really starting to happen. Like I remember there was the first, I forget her name. I was actually in a room with her and I didn't even realize it was her. But one of these artists was making big news because her film had just cost like some outrageous amount of money to make, and it was like 10 minutes long. It was like 6 figures, to make it, which, is a lot of money for like a piece of like abstract video art. But then that pretty much, there was so much buzz about it, there was pretty much a guarantee that was going to sell. But what I got to say is I worked in this building in Chelsea, and it was pretty awesome because I came from San Francisco, and I got to stay in the gallery. And at night, they were moving to the top floor. There was just these boxes of art laying around. And now, in retrospect, at night I'd kind of flip through these framed pieces of art. In retrospect, every single one of those that I was probably now worth about 50 to 100 grand, because there were like artists like Ray Johnson, who used to be part of the Warhol factory, Eugene von Bronkenheim, who's like a big outsider artist. He was a finger painter. There's like all these, they had some Crumb. They had some original Robert Crumb. Yeah, and they also represented Russ Meyer. So they had a bunch of his photos. And yeah, it was kind of all over the place. But like, which is funny because a friend of mine who works at the Academy Archives just gave me a film canister that actually is from Russ Meyer's studios.
Oh, wow.
But, I would take the elevator up and down in this building all the time. And sometimes the doors would open, someone would hop out or something, and I would see something. And I would be like, it would be like a room full of something. And I've been to a few shows. Like I went to one show in New York where like the smell of this room was the art. The room was entirely red, but it was like the aura and the smell. And I later asked that gallery owner, because I met her, I said, what, is that for sale? And she said, yeah. And they sell you the diffuser and this and that. And what I'm getting at is I came to kind of learn, because one night I actually came back to the gallery and that guy Lance was there, and normally when I came back there, I think I went and saw a show at Irving Plaza or something. I came back in the middle of the night. I had to turn off the alarm and go downstairs and all this stuff, but it was on, and he had a few beers in him, and he had like stacks of books. He was organizing books and stuff. And I sat with him, I picked his brain. I said like, hey man, like I saw something over here, or I saw something over there, and I just wonder what makes a splat on a piece of paper what it is. Like, why is that worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars? And his explanation was always something about where it, like we were saying, like where being there at a certain time, where it came from, being part of a scene. It was never about the artwork itself. It was never because it's, look how beautiful it is. That was like never the answer,
Okay.
Okay. And
because because I mean it's funny, because I know when we had talked before, and then just you gave me a bunch of names to look at, and just to kind of catch people up. It's one of those things that you go through art school, and I think this will kind of explain my questioning to you a little bit.
Okay, right.
In that you go to art school and you learn the classics, and then you learn how to do something, and then at some point a professor or a student who's been there way too long and just they make a professor, or you get dragged to a show by a boyfriend or a girlfriend or somebody, and everything is now garbage, and you're like, what? But how come this guy is doing this splat on a wall? How come I'm not? How come I've just learned how to do all of this great stuff? And I know the skill part of it. And this is something, maybe I'm the only one who went through this in art school.
Okay, no.
You go through this, and then you get done, and then it's like, okay, now you have to do something that nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, I think,
and it's just this weird thing where it's like, you start looking, because then you start looking at like punk rock, outsider art, all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, wait a second. They don't know how to do this. How come the royal they like that better than the stuff I'm doing?
Right. And there's a lot of reasons behind that all the time. I mean, there's a lot of, like, if you just pull up Instagram, you'll see, 100 people, if you just search for art, that are just doing insane levels of art, like whether it be painting or drawing, like just doing photorealism. And, those kind of things are the kind of things that like the I don't know what the correct word for it, but like the people who are like involved in big time contemporary art or next level, that they won't even kind of look at that kind of stuff because it's figurative. I got to spend an afternoon with Robert Williams not too long ago, and he's been at war with this his whole life, and supposedly I thought the spiel he was giving me was like something, or me and my friend who knows him a lot better than I do, but I thought the thing he was telling me was something that I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. But then you meet other people that know him, and he was just talking about how anything figurative, when he was with Zap Comics in the 60s, they came along and they were doing anything figurative. They were so looked down upon, and because nobody wanted anything to do with anything that wasn't like expressionism and like anything figurative. Like, so these guys painting these photorealistic, crazy out there, that are like take amazing skill to do. He said that they kind of had to create their own scene. They did. They had to create their own scene that was from those kind of fringe artists. They were like, the lowrider artists, the tattooists, the animators, the comic book artists. And then that kind of stuff kind of largely informed the next generation, which became like known as lowbrow art. I kind of hate that term.
Yeah. It's a super. That's becoming
he's
popular
basically
again.
The founder of that. Yeah, he's kind of the founder of that. And those were the things that when I was a kid, those were like, I think, like I was like me and you were talking about, I think like Thrasher magazine made an entire generation want to draw, and that was definitely me. Like
Okay.
when I first saw a skateboard graphic, I was like, "Whoa!" But anyway, sorry if I'm jumping ahead too much.
No. We're talking about stuff that it's impossible to talk about.
Okay, right.
It's impossible to talk about in a linear way. So
it's true. It kind of, because it's funny, because when we talk about these things, it's almost like I said, like even at the beginning, like when talking about video art, I instantly have to think, well, wait, I could name this person that was within the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
But then what about that guy that did something like 75 years ago that influenced the guy, 50 years ago that,
Yeah,
so that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, some of that's why that's why this contemporary stuff is so bizarre, because there's I think I'll shut up enough about it, but it's always one of those things that I think when you go to art school and more for somebody I'm 40, almost 43, so you go through art school period, you work, then you go, hey, I haven't created anything for myself in a while and I want to create something, just vomit on a page, it doesn't matter, I need to create something. And it harkens you back to that time when you were learning, going, well, I got to do something different. And so many people come into art school with this, they don't know why they come into art school. So long question then, long setup to a question. How did you get involved into art and then wanting to go into an art school program?
Well, so it's kind of weird, but it all kind of, like I said, it all kind of goes back to guitar playing.
Really?
And that's where it all started, because that was my main interest. That's all I wanted to do. And by the time I was probably 16, I was halfway okay.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, and then I was in gigging bands by the time I was 17. I think I played San Francisco clubs when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and so the 2 guys that I started back then with, or not started with, but guys I kind of came together, they're the guys I still to this day play with. So,
what kind of music were you playing?
Back then, it started with thrash.
Okay.
Because that was huge in SF. We were all over thrash.
Oh, really?
But then it kind of branched out, and I started getting really more into kind of some of the. I was always kind of influenced by Bay people, but they were really different. One of my favorite guitarists is this guy Tuck Andrus, who's a jazz guy, and he lives in Menlo Park, and he's actually my teacher now. So, but I haven't, I've taken lessons from him, but one lesson. But we talked a lot, and So, and I got kind of new agey for a minute there. I liked a lot of classical stuff, but now it's just I purely play instrumental, weird space rock, proggy stuff with these guys. So, but anyway, that kind of what I say is, that in the skateboard art, I really I think that really influenced wanting to draw, and then I started to draw. And it's funny, there's this whole group of punk rock guys that came out of Redwood City, the West Bay, and it's this branch of punk rock that's known as power violence. Okay. And it's actually kind of gone into the mainstream. A lot of bands are influenced by it, but some of my friends, those were kind of the first guys that kind of took my drawings and kind of embraced me. They were kind of wow, and just started using them. I would just draw something, all of a sudden it would end up on a flyer or a shirt or something. And then I started kind of becoming known for that. And to this day, I still do stuff for all these guys. But that being said, okay, so I was always loved animation, and I was kind of thinking, music is this, sound, visual, drawing, animation just made sense. But back then, animation was kind of a little bit elusive. It was a little bit far away. I mean, we're talking about Super 8 days, 60. Everybody was shooting 16.
We said this. I asked you. I asked you off mic, but I'm 43. You're a couple years older than me. Right. So video so this is probably what late 80s, early 90s. You're getting into,
right?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it's you have Super 8. Maybe some video cameras that have intervalometers or the ability to go frame by frame that you're kind of maybe trying to use.
Mm-hmm. I was only 8mm, and everybody was kind of there was a lot of people that were going to film school, and everybody was trying to make their like $5,000 16 millimeter film.
Right.
That was gonna,
Sure.
which nowadays you could shoot it for $5. You know what I mean? Because like you gotta wait like for the. It was like this thing where people would shoot films. We'd all help each other shoot films, and then there'd be this like waiting period to see if it was any good when it came back from development, from processing. So it was like, And
to clarify, good was not whether it was good quality, whether it actually exposed properly.
Yeah, there's the technical side, but I would also say the quality side. Half of the time, because a lot of those came back that you thought were going to cut together and make sense, and those just became straight art films. Because
right.
How, we got to splice in, so let's go the other direction. That happened.
Quick, get some GI Joes and some matches, and we'll melt them, and it'll be a political statement. Trust me, it'll be fun.
Yeah. So that's kind of what informed that, I would say. So I kind of started in film, and then I studied animation.
What then pushed you, and what was your steps then to getting into the world that you started creating in with, the animation you're doing and the music and some of the technology background and career?
Okay, yeah.
What moved you into that?
So I think it was, well, it's kind of weird because I always looked up to things that were, like I looked up to people like Chuck Jones, Tex Avery. I love the Marx Brothers. I love Stanley Kubrick. Like those are the things that if I have to like really sit down and read about something that I'm interested in, I could read about Kubrick for like hours and not even realize it. So I always kind of knew I wanted to like do something that was outside of the, I didn't want any kind of confines. But what led me to creating what I do now, I think, is a little bit of getting the opportunity to do it, a little bit of like, just, one job kind of serendipitously leading to another job that ultimately, that got me some experience, Well, okay, so this is a little bit abstract. Well, maybe not abstract, but like sometimes like I've noticed this a lot. People in history who have had these like really opinions that people either revere or hate are people that they didn't stop at a point where it could work for the world. They had to be extreme. It's always that way, and like so like in the instance of somebody like the writer Ayn Rand, right? She's somebody who's like loathed by some people, and some people embrace it, but it's a really extreme thing. Yeah. But there's some really interesting ideas in there. And one of them is in her story, The Fountainhead. That character, he's an architect. He's like the most brilliant architect in the world. But he would rather see his work destroyed than be compromised by people who aren't as good at it. So there's these points where he he actually goes and works in a rock quarry for like months. Just, and that's kind of actually, if there's anything in my life, because here's the truth, like back when I was in school and all that stuff, that is so long ago, like that stuff, we're not even doing that anymore, right? We're not doing half that stuff. So I actually stepped outside of the world of, working on anything. I was always doing art, but like anything career-wise, and I like worked in construction for like long periods of time, a couple times, and I kind of think of that as like my rock quarry time. But that like, where I just kind of went out there, and it's not like I thought my work was better than anybody else's. It had nothing to do with that. It was more about I just didn't want to work in those confines, and I wanted to learn how to do all these things, but that like those times so largely informed everything I do. Like seriously, because that's where I learned how to do everything almost.
What do you mean?
I learned how to use tools. Okay. And anytime, like all tools, I learned how basic things go together, all this, mechanics, plumbing, like just every single thing, and every time, I would just collect all these ideas. They would always in my mind be headed back towards art. Like I was always thinking, how can I apply this? Right. How can I apply this? Someday the goal was always to get back to art. It was always to get back to art. So, and well, I mean, not to jump ahead, zoom ahead too much, but this is where I feel like stop motion comes in very much, because that is where you take all of those things and you apply it to art. That's where
Got it,
animation,
right.
that's the style, because, you put me behind a 3D system and I might, learn it, but it's not the same as me building things, and it doesn't
Okay.
appeal to me in that same
Yeah.
way, Um, as far as the technology goes, I kind of just like worked my way up in that. And I started as a game tester many, many years ago. There was a period of time where I very much chased commercial success,
Mhm.
and I really don't want to look at that artwork at all now. I don't, none of it was good. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
I was trying to please people, and
Sure.
everything that I done that I care about is stuff I did that came from a place. But what I'm getting at with the students and stuff is, many of them, especially this younger generation, because when I first started at the academy, it was like 13, 14 years ago.
Okay.
And, when
Which
I
is
first,
a
in that
lifetime in art, it seems like.
right. I was a lot closer to the age of the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I'd bring up something like in an experimental animation class, when I'd bring up like a video by Tool or something, like one that's
Sure.
like one of the stop motion videos that kind of made a band big, right?
Yeah.
A lot of kids would pop up and have like all these, Tool fans, and have all these opinions. Oh, well, I think that they were better then, or this and that. Now you ask all the kids that I have now or whatever, like, maybe some of them, I'm sorry if, some of the online classes, I don't know somebody, but 90% of them don't even know what that is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but so I kind of wonder, I think there's a sense, a lot of them love the stuff they grew up with, and they're kind of growing up, and they're kind of, coming in to get the technical knowledge to go do it and hopefully be part of that,
Okay.
part of that. I don't know if there's, and I've met a few, and there's a few younger ones, students that I had that were just fantastic, that I feel like have that, but I almost kind of, and wonder how many of them are coming through the school with the notion of, I'm going to pave my own way in the world as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know how much of that is, a lot of them I feel like are kind of are studying to learn the technicals, and then, go work for Disney or go work for, one of those, which is great.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's great, because if you can do that, you're just, that's great. And that's what's interesting about stop motion, is that I notice a lot of the students that come through, they are the ones that are really passionate about it, have very, very specific things that they want to put on screen.
Yeah, I really want to get into that, because that was something I was.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up doing stop motion. I think there's that
Oh, cool.
generation of us who, if you're over 40 and into art stuff, your dad or your uncle had a Super 8 camera, because everybody had a Super 8 camera in the 60s and 70s, and you learned how
Right.
to, set your GI Joes on fires or blow them up with fireworks. And then you got video cameras, and they became cheap by the time you were in high school and after high school. And then it disappeared, and it was all computers, and that was a learning curve. And then things like, I mean, for me it was Robot Chicken, but so many other
yeah.
people, I think for everyone has their thing, but there was this resurgence of stop motion that turned it into something, not even viable, but beyond viable, as almost like
Right.
a better alternative. I mean, how for you has stop motion become this method of choice?
Well, at the very beginning of that, I would say it's because you can kind of animate with anything.
Okay.
You can kind of dig
Right.
into your, junk drawer and figure out something to animate, I mean, but I think I actually, so we actually had a conference with that studio Stupid Buddy. They do Robot Chicken. They were saying they're busier than they've ever been right now. And they have like, 70 stages going on any given day.
Holy cow.
Well, and it's because there's a lot of demand for it. But one of the things that they kind of touched on that I really think is a huge thing, and that is the technology. And that is that Dragon frame, the program Dragon frame to shoot stop motion animation. That's the industry standard, and anybody can own it for $300. So
Oh
it's
my gosh.
yeah, it's well, if you're a student, even less than that. But Like I'm pitching for them right now.
No, that's okay.
I'm selling this thing. But all you need, if you have that and a DSLR camera, a couple lenses, that's what they used to shoot every single stop motion movie in the last, couple decades.
Wow.
So, well,
Okay.
no, maybe not couple decades. So when I was at the academy, when I was in this department last, before I came back to Stop Mo, that was right before Dragon Frame came out, right. So we were using something called iStop Motion. There wasn't a lot of stuff out there. We were using like standard video cameras and iStop Motion.
Okay.
And then Dragon Frame kind of came along and just blew this wide open. So and it's a great tool for all kinds of things. But so what I'm getting at is that the cost of it has come way down.
Yeah.
And the cost of doing it is way down. And I think it is actually, it's something that I really honestly believe instantly kind of intrigues. It kind of has this thing that pulls people into it because of the way it looks. Because I really, there's this argument, is there an emotional difference between something that's photographed or something that's generated computer-wise? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people argue, no, the medium doesn't matter. It's the story, it's the character, it's this and that. I agree with that, but I also am not looking to really watch too many 3D movies. You know what I mean? I'm not really into that.
I don't know. I'm old enough to have done darkroom in high school. I'm like, I don't know, man. You gotta. If you're not using chemicals, man, it's not real.
well, I'm with you there too. I totally am. But the thing about that is that I believe that it being a truly tangible thing that you're looking at does change the emotional reaction naturally. I believe that because I mean, even I look back to some of the early stop motion stuff, like me and you are slightly same generation, but a lot of that stop mo stuff I saw was on MTV shows like Liquid Television.
But yeah, Liquid Television, 120 minutes.
And even their bumpers, they had the Brothers Quay bumpers, and that was the first time I saw that stuff with like baby heads with nails in it and like using magnetic, and that stuff we were like, whoa, like what is, like that's the stuff that like we really were like, that is like the coolest thing
It's funny.
seen.
This kind of answers that question that I asked you. It was like, that was almost like punk rock for a lot of us visual artists.
Yeah.
Because it was absolutely. Like, I can get a rock and glue some googly eyes on it and move it around a stage and, screw you, I can make it.
Absolutely. And what's fun, I remember one time I heard somebody say that like Brothers Quay inspired an entire generation to break open electronics and pull circuit boards and start animating them, like pasting them to baby heads and animating, which is kind of true. But see, that's what I'm saying. Like right after that, then all of a sudden, like, Tool puts out their first video.
Right.
And what's interesting is I saw that band open for Rollins' band when they were like kind of like a nothing California. Yeah, it was a long time. And they were amazing. And next thing I know, that video comes out, and I literally honestly think, okay, they are a good band. Okay, I'm not super into them. That's not my thing. But
everybody has owned a Tool CD at some point.
Right. Yeah. Well, I love the first two. I think they're great. But I really think that stop motion work that Adam Jones, their guitar player, did is one of the main reasons why they became so gigantic. Yeah. Because people just latched onto that. And I don't know if that would have been so far out. Yeah. And it was so weird. None of it makes any sense, but it's visually just amazing. Yeah. And I don't think that would have been the same. I honestly don't think that would have been the same if it was a 2D thing or if it was a 3D thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe 2D.
For sure.
Here's a counter argument to me. When I was in, like, I can't remember what grade it was, the video for Money for Nothing by Dire Straits came out.
Sure,
and that's a really early CG video, our 3D. Yeah. And it's got like everyone's blocky, and we thought that was the most amazing thing we had ever seen.
It'll come up on a YouTube feed of mine, and I'll still stop and watch it because it's like, damn, that was so good.
It's cool, I mean, when the movie Tron came out, I was in first grade. I saw it in the theater, and I was obsessed with it. I mean, and these felt like they were humongous leaps. They really were. But what I love about stop motion is that I have a friend, and he used to teach at the school. His name's Justin Kahn. I went to his house. He's worked on every one of those Henry Selick movies. He's a fabulous animator, great armature builder. I just went up to his studio a couple weeks ago, and he has an actual, I guess Universal released these actual replicas of the armature of King Kong from 1930.
Okay.
I think it was
the Harryhausen type.
It was Willis O'Brien.
Okay.
Willis O'Brien, 1933. But somebody's gonna say no, dude, it was 34 or what, But anyway, and I was looking at this thing in comparison to one of his armatures, and I was kind of like, nothing has changed. And he says, no. We do it a little. It's a little different, but it's still, the mechanics are all the same. The materials are better. The lathes, the mills are better.
Yeah.
But this goes back, and the fact that we can still do this now and do it at a high level and mix it with other technologies, and that's I think where it's going. I think that it's getting mixed up, because those Leica movies have so much, digital love put into them.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah,
you can
beautiful.
You can color time now better, and you're working with a better source material, as it were.
Right, and all of that stuff is becoming so much cheaper. Or even like free, or it's at your fingertips now.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because when you think about all the art stuff that you learn in school and all the different technologies that have come and gone, it is interesting how that is one of those technologies that, like you had said, you worked in a quarry and did construction. Yeah. You now know how to do this. You know how to use a camera. It's not that difficult. Everybody has a camera at this point.
Right.
A real, quote unquote, real camera is nothing. And then, software is not expensive. So yeah, you really, there's nothing stopping you.
A lot of times you'll buy a piece of hardware and they'll give you their proprietary software, with it, that, you can do cool stuff. So back to a real quick thought about the quarry was when my days in the rock quarry. No, when I say that, one thing I would say about that is that it's kind of one of those things, and I will say this about software as well, is that with tools, it's almost like my dad, when I worked with him for some years before he moved to Missouri, and whenever we would be looking for a drill, because he worked in the elevator union for years, he's an elevator guy, and he for many years, and anyway, whenever he'd ask for a drill, he'd call it a drill motor. He's all, "Where's that drill motor at?" Because to him, it's just a motor. It's a motor that spins. And I think about that because that is pretty much all every tool is. It's just at a different angle. It has a different purpose. Sometimes there's two together. Sometimes And so that being said, you can say, "Hey, do you know how to use that tool?" And I can be like, "I've never used that one, but I'm sure that within 20 minutes I can probably use that tool." Yes. And it doesn't matter what it is, unless it's, something, a CNC machine or something, something that's, whatever. But I'll say this about software too. And it's kind of like that too, because that's kind of what filmmaking, animating is it's kind of presenting yourself with a bunch of problems and trying to figure out how to do those. And they're within those programs, and there's no manual for it necessarily. Right. There's manual for the tools. But even like you look at somebody like Kubrick, every single one of his films, he had to kind of talk to the camera company or do this to get things made for what he was trying to do. So that's now in. So I it's the same way with software. I might not know a piece of software, but I feel like I can take a half an hour and I can probably get under the hood and we could probably figure out what you need to get done with it. And I feel like, especially like the stuff that Adobe's made, I really think Adobe's an incredible company. And I was talking to my friend, he thinks that Photoshop is the greatest program ever written. And when he said that, I was thinking, there's a strong argument for that, because there's how many people use it in so many different ways and don't use it the same. I mean, it just gives you this basic set. I know animators that work 100% in Photoshop. Yeah.
Yes. So, I've seen that. So, and you're like, what are you doing? That's insane. Yeah. And it's great.
I mean, they do big commercial work 100% in Photoshop. So, so that being said, that's when I say that I feel like that time really informed me. And it's not even so much like, oh, I learned how to, install, sinks or gas lines or whatever, which I did. It's so much that conceptually it's like, okay, I now know what it takes to actually make something, create something. And part of the excitement of it is figuring out how to do it and not quite knowing,
Right.
So I think that the best thing you could probably come out of school with is a sense like that. Like, okay, I'm going to be presented with a bunch of problems and I just need to dig into what I know and figure it out and then find what will fill in the rest. You know what I mean? The best case scenario is that you just do really well, right? You just, you have a career, you just are a master of something and you just never are not in demand, right? That's probably the best case scenario from the technical side. Best case scenario for maybe the artistic side is you have this incredible career where, you're invited to the red carpet at the Met Gala, maybe, that's pretty far fetched, but that, it has happened. Or you have a career where you're just allowed to do, okay, here's what the best case scenario, you just get to do what you want to do. As an artist, you get to chase things and you get to create them. And there's never going to be a shortage of people that don't want to work with you, just completely independent of any company. Or whatever. You can just be an artist. And it seems, I don't really know what that means in the world right now, but it's definitely possible. And I also think that it's, it is a tough path. Art is a tough path. I know you talked about that, a little bit, because it's kind of like, you go to school to become a doctor or something. That's hard, right? You got to know all kinds of stuff. But at the end of, if you do everything, you become a doctor, and then you can just be a doctor.
Right.
Our art is so much, like you say, it's not it's so not tangible. A lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of it's not tangible, and a lot of it's like, it's. Which kind of makes it exciting because it puts you in a world where there's a lot of possibility. But one thing I got to say is you do have to get used to rejection because it's just, it's just part of the game,
Yeah. So give me a list of some artists. How do we scare the crap out of some kids and get them into some weird stuff? Who are some artists that you've worked with or that you dig that, people should be, really taking a look at?
Okay. So, wow. How careful should I be?
Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, people I've worked with, I'd say if you're into stop motion, you got to know who Bruce Bickford was. He was one of my best friends. He passed away last year. I actually just saw the Zappa doc last night that I worked on too, and it was incredible.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. In his part, and it was beautiful. He worked for Frank Zappa. Look at Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
Kenneth Anger he was a friend of mine. I haven't seen him in many years, but he's a highly influential experimental filmmaker, maybe arguably the godfather of the music video art. Martin Scorsese said that he got his idea to use contemporary music as opposed to orchestral score from the film Scorpio Rising by Kenneth Anger. Alejandro Jodorowsky, who did The Holy Mountain, El Topo. That is some really out there stuff. That the good place to start with that. I'm a huge fan, maybe not of some of the treatment of animals in some of those older films. Jodorowsky's Dune, about his attempt to make the movie Dune in the late 60s, is something I feel like everybody should watch. If you don't know H.R. Giger, you should, of course. Gaspar Noé.
Yeah. That's a rough.
I met him.
Yeah, that's a rough one for people. So yeah, take that as a very, very gentle walk.
Proceed with caution.
Yeah, there you go. Proceed with like extreme caution. Yes.
Start with actually his last movie, and it was rough. But but yeah, I actually met him in Tokyo.
Oh, wow.
It was just totally bizarre. I just recognized him. He was staying in the same hotel I was, and we talked for a minute. He was cool. Who else? So another guy I kind of look up to is a filmmaker from Japan named Takashi Miike. who
Oh my God! Wow, and you were asking me like we were just saying Gaspar Noé was rough, but oh man, yeah.
Okay, but here's the okay, right. So here's the thing about yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, maybe I should rescind that one.
And
But
if no
here's the
one
interesting-
knows what that is, when you hear that, it'll ruin your life for at least a month, and it'll be
Right.
worth it.
And also the interesting thing, the reason why I say I kind of look up to him, it's not so much even by his films. I love his movie Gozu, but he makes these incredibly violent, insane, ethereal movies. But then he makes children's movies on
really?
the side.
Okay,
yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Largely to finance those other movies he wants to make.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In Japan, you can kind of do these things. It's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. Speaking of Japan, the band Ruins, Ruins.
Okay.
They changed my life. I love them so much. They're a dense one. They're very chaotic. The band Magma from France. Who else? It's an easy one, but you gotta know about King Crimson. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You just have to. The company Hypnosis, HIPGNOSIS, who made some of the greatest album covers of all time. I think they did all the Zeppelin, all those bizarro Pink Floyd ones. Gerald Scharf, Ralph Steadman, the movie The Wall, Pink Floyd. That was a huge jump off point for me animation wise. I saw that and I was thinking that is like the kind of animation I love, and that's by Gerald Scharf. And
Okay.
it's, gosh, I mean, I could dig deep, but that's that. Here's a weird one. There's an artist named Andres Serrano.
Okay.
And the guy I worked for in New York actually worked that with him when he was starting, and he caused a national controversy because the national endowment for the art money went to him, and he did something that was considered quote unquote blasphemous, and it went to the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a minute, but as you were saying it, you were soft selling it. I was like, I know exactly what this is. It's actually taught in every photography class, and it's an image of religious icon in fluid, and you can figure it out very quickly. And it is probably one of the most important pieces of photography in the last 50 years.
And because of that, because of the controversy around him, the people that were condemning him made him an absolute legend.
Right.
And he did like 2 of those Metallica record covers. He's done he's done so much. He's huge. But anyway, so gosh, I could think of many more, but maybe
that's a pretty good mind blender for people.
And after you probably go through those names, if you do, you might think twice about. I hope that you'll still come say hello to me in my office.
So I hope that gave you a little bit of insight as we kind of rambled around and talked about influences and people we like and people Aaron likes and things that really drove his career and drove his style. Because if you've ever dreamed about a career in art and design, and right now more and more art and design career opportunities are on the rise, employers are always on the hunt for the next generation of talented and, of course, skilled creative professionals. At Academy of Art University, you will get those work-ready skills that employers want, and you can study on-site in downtown San Francisco or, of course, anywhere in the world right now with our online programs. To request info about our 40-plus areas of study in art and design, including visual development, stop-motion animation, game development, you name it, visit our website at academyart.edu/creativemind. And most importantly, please hit subscribe on whatever device you're listening to so you never miss an episode of Creative Mind. I'm Bobby Brill. Thanks for listening.